Hi, everybody. It's Leslie with the New Mexico Small Business Development Center, and I'm here today with Eric Spellman. And I always call him public speaker extraordinaire because he gives us such great information that you can take back to your small business. Today, getting found online with Google, the rules have changed. I tell you what, we have a lot of people streaming in for this presentation. If you have any questions, don't be shy. Type them into the Q&A and Eric will pick them up throughout the entire presentation. New Mexico Small Business Development Center wants to remind all New Mexico small businesses of the importance of taking cybersecurity for your business seriously. We have webinars available pre-recorded on demand on our YouTube channel, and I will send everyone the link to learn about the cybersecurity risks. And Eric did one just recently for us on the top 10 ways hackers want you to make mistakes, something along that lines, but I will send you the link. And with all that, I'll turn it over to Eric Spellman.
Thank you, Leslie. Okay, we have got a lot to cover. This is a big subject, so I hope you're ready. And I don't want you to feel like you have to write down all these points because my wonderful host will be making this presentation fully available for you to download. So every point on it. So if you're going to take notes, and I hope you are, I want you to take notes on the things that apply directly to you or ideas you get during this presentation. So let's get started. You got to realize that defining online success involves a lot of things. Number one, you got to have a website that converts. A website that converts a looker to a doer, from lead to a customer, from a browser to a sale. If you don't have a website that does this, you're in deep trouble. You've got to have this. If your website is just sitting there being advertising and everything, that ain't a good website. But in order to get traffic there, in order to get all those browsers there, you have to be found because people are going to Google. And yes, Google is the only one that matters. Listen to me. Google is the only one that matters. You know, they get 98%, and I mean 98% of all searches. You know, the other 1% is like Yahoo and Bing, but then the rest of them are like less than 1% after that. So really the only group you need to impress for your business to be found is Google. So what motivates Google? Let's talk about that. Because if you want to be found, you got to understand what impresses Google from a company standpoint, from a website standpoint. The key is to understand what Google's goals are. Google's goals are really quite simple, and they lay them out and they make them very simple. They want relevant results ranked first. And really, this is what made them the biggest, because back in the day, and I mean back in the day, I've been around since before the internet, there were lots of search engines. I mean, there was Alta Vista, there was Ask Jeeves, there was Excite, I could go on and on and on and on. Google wasn't even the first one, but they were the ones who came out on top. Why? Because people slowly discovered that when they did a search of Google, they got better results than when they did a search of the rest. When they did a search of Google, they didn't have to hunt as hard because Google somehow knew what they were asking. It was smarter. And so everyone just started using Google. Now, like I said, they wanted relevant results ranked first. Now, how do you define relevant? Relevant means to what you ask. You know, it's not just about keywords anymore. And I'm going to be very clear on that. You need to realize if someone's telling you it's all about keywords, stop listening to them. It's not about keywords anymore. What also made Google very popular is its plain English interface. You can actually talk to Google like a fifth grader. That's right. I'm talking about talking to their computers. You can type real sentences in there. Google understands the difference between how and when and why and where. It knows what those mean. And I know that creeps some of you out, but I'm here to tell you We're pretty much to the Star Trek days when they could just talk to the computer and it would understand them and give them the answer they needed. Keep in mind though, what Google's ultimate goal is. Everyone wonders, what is Google's ultimate goal? I mean, what are they going to do? Take over the planet? Probably. But you got to realize their goal is not to just give you results. Because right now, when you do a search at Google, you're getting results. You're getting what Google thinks, where you might find the answer, and it lists 10 of them. And there's some ads added to that, but it lists 10 of them and it thinks, well, maybe whatever they're asking, they can find the answer here. And I've tried to rank them based on what I think will be the best shot for them. That's what Google does. But Google's ultimate goal is to give you the actual answer instead of making you go to another website. We can prove this now. You can go to Google right now and you can type in, how old is Lady Gaga? And it will tell you. You can go to Google right now and it'll tell you that, and it'll just give you the answer in what's called an answer box. That is Google's ultimate goal, is to simply give you the answer and not just make you hunt for it on a list of sites it gives you. One of the keys is to understand organic versus paid ads. Organic ads are the natural ads, okay? Paid ads are based on what we call pay per click. The way you can tell an ad, whenever you do a search in Google, you're going to get some ads in there. And the way you know they're ads is because they have a tiny little, it says ad to the left of the title. It's AD, you'll see it. Those people actually paid to be there. They paid to show up when that search was done. And you're saying, well, what affects the order of those ads? Who gets to be the first ad? Basically, whoever's willing to pay the most for a click. Because you see, those advertisers only pay Google if someone actually clicks on their ad. I mean, 1 million people could see their ad, but if no one clicks on it, it didn't cost that advertiser anything. That's why we call it pay per click. And whoever's willing to pay the most per click gets to be first, for the most part. You're saying, well, what do those ads cost? Well, they go anywhere from, they started around a nickel per click. And the most expensive click I've ever seen was $400 a click. You're going, oh, I would never pay $400 a click. Yes, you would. That particular search was for a very specific yacht. And trust me, if people are looking for a very specific yacht, you will drop $400 just for the chance to talk to them. The way that paid ads work is, what if a lot of people click on your ads? Is it going to cost you a lot of money? No, you set a daily budget. You say, Google, this is the maximum amount I want to pay per day to you, period. So when I hit that amount, drop all my ads till tomorrow. It's really good. And I'll be honest, if you want to compete today, you need to be doing paid advertising. I mean, I'm going to be teaching you how to do it the organic way, get free like I did it, get all the free advertising you can. But while you're doing that, you need to add some paid advertising, okay? But organic is Google's favorite. And that's what Google considers the most relevant. You can't pay to be here. You can't pay Google to be number one organically. You see, the ads all start with AD, but then the organic ones, they don't have that ad thing next to them. That's what Google considers the most relevant. And it puts 10 and only 10 on a page. Sometimes they mix ads in there, but there are only 10 organic or natural results. These people paid nothing. It's the primo spot. Number one is really the holy grail of what you want. 90% of the clicks on that page will go to the organic. 10% will go to the paid. Okay. So organic is really what you're shooting for. And I tell people all the time, you need to be on the first page of Google. You really do. Because I have people sometimes come up and they say, Spellman, I'm so excited. I finally made it to the second page of Google results when someone does a search. And I'm like, that's nothing, because you basically don't exist. Did you know that most people, when they do a search and they don't find it on the first page, they don't go to the second page of Google. They change their search. So if you're showing up number 11, which means you're number one on page 2, That's nothing. You're not going to get near the clicks as if you were number 10 on page 1. So let me just tell you right now what your goal is. Your goal is page 1. I'm not going to tell you that your goal is number 1 on page 1 because that is near impossible. It's possible, I've done it, but it's not as controllable as you think. But you can get to page 1. And trust me, all the clicks go to page 1, every one of them. And the key is to understand how people search. Google did a test not too long ago, and they watched how men and how women search the internet. And they discovered that for the most part, women ask questions. In other words, they actually typed questions into Google. Men would type keywords. Guess which way Google works better? Questions. If you learn to treat Google like a human being, you will get better results. I'm telling you, keywords are no longer relevant. Keyword, don't let anyone try to sell you on this whole keywords. And that's one of the big rules that have changed. It's no longer about keywords. It's no longer about keywords at all. You also got to realize that your strategies when showing up in Google need to be what we call long tail. Back in the day when people first, when Google first came out and when search engines first came out, people might go to Google and they'll just type in cars, one word, cars, and boom, they got a list of cars. Oh, how cool. But then as the internet grew and there's more and more websites and there's tens of thousands of car websites, people realized they need to get more specific. So they started typing in Jeeps, and then they started typing in Jeep Liberties, and then 2021 Jeep Liberty, then 2021 white Jeep Liberty. You see, the longer the search, the more accurate the results. And that's what we call a long tail strategy. Too many people are still thinking about keywords. And I want to show up for this, and I want to show up for that word and that 2-word phrase. No. You need to think of the long tail strategies. If you sell cars, are you even showing up for 2021 white Jeep Liberties? You were just hoping to show up for used cars. That's not how this works anymore. You got to realize that the population out there have learned to type really long things into search because it narrows it down to a laser focus on what they want, and they'll get what they want quicker if they type in a longer or long tail search. So you need to start having long tail strategies. So I also say this: if you are a business owner, now look at me, pay attention here. I know you're eating your lunch, but if you're a business owner, you're not qualified to know what people are searching for about you. That's right, you're not qualified. You are too in the box. You know too much about what you do. You know too much about your company. And so your assumptions about what people are typing in are completely wrong. You got to realize that your customers are ignorant. That's right, I said it. And I don't mean that in a negative, like stupid. Ignorant simply means they don't know as much as you. And too many times, business owners, they try to show up for lingo that their customers don't even use. And so you got to step outside. And that's why I say you need to talk to your clients. You need to talk to your customers. And you need to ask them some pretty specific questions. And I'll show you those questions in a second. You also need to know about Google Trends. And this is a free website you can go to. And yeah, just Google that. Just Google Trends and you'll pull it right up. And what Google Trends shows you is kind of the popularity of searches. So if you're thinking, oh, everyone's searching for me on this, go to Google Trends and it'll tell you if it's actually popular. And it'll show you over time and over the last 15 years how popular or unpopular that search has been. It'll even tell you what parts of the country are searching for different things. It's one of the most amazing behind the scenes, behind the curtain of Google websites I've ever seen. And it's by Google. Google is actually telling you what people are searching for. You know, you also need to know how to Google yourself. And I tell people all the time, and yeah, I've said that before, and I'm going to keep saying it. I tell people all the time, you don't need to pay someone for reputation management. Okay. If you want to find the bad stuff about you out there, I'm going to give you a little trick right now, because you need to Google yourself and you need to Google your company and learn what people are saying about you. And you don't need to hire a company to do that for you. You can do it for free. And one of the easiest ways is to go to Google and do a very specific search. But I'm going to give you the trick. You're going to type in your name, your personal name, and or you might type in your company name, but then you're going to add one more word to those. If you want to find out if people are talking bad about you, here's the secret. You type in your name, and the second word you type in, you're going to laugh when I tell you this, is sucks. S-U-C-K-S. That's right. That's the number one word people use when they're talking bad about somebody. And so if you want to find out if someone's talking bad about your company, type in the name of your company. You know, my company sucks. Your name sucks. And I know this sounds funny, but it's not. This is science, okay? Now, some of you are going to stop listening right now and get on your phones and actually do this because now you're curious. Can you just wait, please? Because I got a lot more to cover, okay? So you got to know how to Google yourself. And that'll also help you find what other people are saying about you. So I told you earlier that the only way you're going to find what people are actually, how people are actually looking for you is to talk to your clients. So you're going to give your clients 3 questions. Okay. And remember, you're going to get a copy of this presentation. So don't feel like you have to write these completely down. You're going to pick 5 of your best clients, people that you could trust, people that have done business with you for a while. And you're going to ask questions like this. Number 1, what problem is my service or product the solution to? Now, this is really important because you got to realize, and y'all are going to be mad when I tell you this, but I told you I was going to be real with you. So listen, no one wants what you sell. Got it? No one wants what you sell. They want the value it brings. Let me say that again. No one wants your product or service. They want the value it brings. No one wants a shovel. They want a hole. Got it? So you keep thinking you're showing up for shovels. You keep trying to make yourself show up for shovels when people are saying, how do I make a hole? You get it? You know that plumbers' websites are a good example of this. You know, plumbers, they talk about plumbing and they think they want to show up for plumbing. No, you need to show up when people say, how do I unstop a drain? How, things like that. You need to start showing up for the problem if you want to be the solution, because people go to Google and they type in their problems. Yes, they do. And if you don't show up for the problem, you'll never be the solution. So you need to ask that. Ask, what problem is my service or product the solution to? Second, what question on Google is my service or product the answer to? Have you ever thought about that? What is the question where you're the answer? These are very important things, because if you haven't ever looked at your company this way, then you've never looked at it as a customer. So you need to figure out, what is the problem that I solve and what is the question that I answer? And when you come up with those, that's what you need to start showing up for on Google. But there's the most important one of all. How would someone search for my company if they didn't know my business name? Think about that one for a second. If a potential customer didn't know your company even existed, what would they type in? How would they search for your company if they didn't know the name of your company? That's right. I'm talking about people search for what your company does. And do you actually know what that is? You probably know too well what that is, and that's why you're not qualified to answer that question. Once again, We're not trying to reach experts here. We're trying to reach your customers. Okay? So one of the keys is to know the right questions to ask those customers. And trust me, if you do this little experiment I just gave you, if you called 5 of your customers and asked those 3 questions, it's going to blow you away. Some of them are going to tell you things that you're going to go, I don't even do that. Why would they search for that? But here's the deal. They're not wrong. They're not wrong. They're your customers and potential customers. And that's all that matters. So let's get to how Google works. How does this work? Well, there are these little things called spider bots. And yeah, that little picture, I know, looks like a crazy little spider robot. But a spider bot is actually a piece of software. And Google programmers wrote them. And what these little spider bots do, and there's millions of them, they crawl around the web. Get it? Spiders crawling the web. Spider bots. That's why we call them spider bots. Spider bots crawl the web. And what they do is they say, land on your homepage, the first page of your website. And what they do is they gobble up every word on that page, every word, and send it back to the mothership. Send it back to Google, to Google's big computers. And then the little spider bot finds all the links on that page and it follows all the links, landing on other pages, gobbling up all the words on those pages, sending them back to the mothership. Basically, what's happening is these spiders are crawling the web, gobbling up every word on every page, on every website, on the internet. That's right. Google systems basically have, to the word, every single word on the internet indexed. But how do they handle what they show you next? I mean, what if a lot of people, let's say fish, you're looking up fish. There's millions of websites that talk about fish. So how does Google give you the #1 site? How does Google give you, how does it know how to rank them? Well, that's kind of what this whole presentation is about. Relevancy. The relevancy of what they typed in to what your web page says. You got to realize that there's hundreds of things and that Google changes it regularly. You know, back in the day, it was all about keywords. Back in the beginning, it was all about keywords. You know, and the sad thing is, a lot of people who had websites figured that out. And what Google said was that, okay, if this website mentions the word fish once, it'll be in our list. Oh, look, this one mentions the word fish twice. Let's put it ahead of the other one. Oh, look, this one mentions fish 80 times. Let's put that as #1. So people realized the more often a keyword showed up, the higher they would go in Google. So guess what they did? They cheated. And some of y'all may not remember this, but back in the day, there were, if you would scroll to the bottom of a lot of web pages, you would just see a whole bunch of words just typed over and over and over and over. Those were people trying to influence Google, trying to convince Google that they were more relevant than they were. That's not how it works anymore. The rules have changed. Keywords are irrelevant. The algorithm, which is actually a mathematical algorithm, okay, on how one website or one web page is ranked above another web page, is completely secret. It has to be. Because think about it. If I knew the actual mathematical equation that Google used to rank one website over another, I could rig it. I could go in and be #1 almost overnight. So it's secret. Google keeps that secret. And you know, I go to a lot of conferences where Google speaks, where people from Google speak at these conferences. And I swear, in every single conference I'm in where Google's speaking, there's someone in the crowd who stands up and goes, how do I make my website show up higher in Google? And do you know the answer they give? They're taught this answer because they can't give you the actual equation. So you know what answer Google gives you? Google said, they say, if your web page would be more relevant to a human for what they searched, then it will be more relevant for Google. Let me say that again. If a human would have considered your page more relevant, then Google will consider your page more relevant. This was eye-opening because basically Google was stating that their computers are about as smart as people. And from what we can tell, they're up to about a 5th grade level in being people. And I know that sounds crazy. They're not actual walking around little robots. But the systems, the massive systems they have in place, can understand text so well and can understand what people mean when they ask questions. And they understand context. That's what you need to understand. So here's the deal. No one knows the actual mathematical equation, including me. And anyone who calls you, and trust me, they will call you. You will get phone calls from people claiming to be from Google saying, we've noticed you're not showing up well, but if you pay us, we can help you show up better. Hang up on those people. Those are con men, kind of like the auto warranty phone calls you get. You will also get phone calls claiming to be from Google. Listen to me. Google does not call you ever. So anyone claiming to be from Google, trying to help you show up better in Google, hang up on them immediately. They are con. No one, including me, knows the actual mathematical equation. But patterns emerge. And that's what I'm here to teach you. And by the way, what I'm teaching you is not what we call black hat. It's not like if Google catches me telling you this, I'm in trouble, you're in trouble. No. Trust me, Google has taught me this. And what I'm teaching you is totally above board. It's how Google wants you to be found. You just need to understand that. The key is conversational search. You see, Google wants to be your Greek oracle. You might remember the Greek oracle of old, back in Greek myth days. The oracle was an entity that a person could go up to and ask any question and it would know the answer. And it would give the answer. It was called the oracle. Well, that's what Google wants to be for you. If it's irrelevant to a human for that phrase, it's going to be relevant to Google. So you need to start talking to Google like it's a human being. And I know that's creepy. I know. But you will get better answers if you do. If you stop trying to treat it like a computer and you start treating it like a person, you will get better answers. I promise you. And that's because it is almost like a person in that Google is all about context, not keywords. You see, Google knows that an attorney and a lawyer are the same thing. And so too many law firm sites, they go, oh, we need to show up for attorney. Oh, we need to show up for a lawyer. Oh, what do we do? It doesn't matter anymore because Google understands that they're the same. So what is the SEO requirement? And by the way, SEO is short for what? Search engine optimization. In other words, getting found on Google. That's what SEO is. Search engine optimization. You really don't need to remember that unless you want to impress people at parties. Okay. SEO. It's all about content, content, content. And this content has to be text. It has to be text. Listen to me. It has to be text. If your website mostly has pictures on it, you will never be found. You see, Google really doesn't understand pictures. It's starting to. And believe it or not, you're actually teaching it. Did you know how you're teaching it? What pictures are? Have you ever had one of those where it's trying to prove you're not a robot and it asks you to click all the squares that have a stoplight in them, click all the squares that have a bicycle in them? Have you ever had one of those little tests? Do you know what you're actually doing? Google is giving you a picture and you and hundreds of others are given the same picture. And it's learning what a bike looks like because of y'all voting on what a bike looks like. It's the coolest thing in the world. You're actually teaching. Okay. So content, content, content. While Google understands pictures to a very small degree, I could have, for instance, if I had 100 pictures of giraffes on a web page, I would not show up well if someone did a search on giraffes. The key is text. How much text do you have on your web pages? Actual text. So when you hear me say content, 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 I mean text, text, text. And that text must be unique, it must be conversational, and it must be frequent. Let's talk about each one. First, the content must be unique. The text on your web pages must be unique. It must not exist anywhere else on planet Earth. Did you hear me? Because only the first gets credit with Google. Whoever had it first. So, good example. Maybe you sell products for a manufacturer. So on your product descriptions, you just copied the manufacturer product description and put it on your website. That's not going to help you be found for that product at all. Because why? Because every one of your competitors has the exact same description. And whoever had it first is the only one who's going to get shown. Your text must be unique. It must not exist anywhere else. So how does it do that? Some people say, well, Eric, if I go in and I change one word, will that make it unique? No. You know, there's a service out there called Copyscape. Copyscape. And colleges use it. You know, whenever a student writes a thesis or a paper, a lot of professors will run it against Copyscape. And what Copyscape does is it looks for plagiarism. It looks to see if a student copied their paper from somewhere on the internet. And the way it does that is it doesn't look for exact copies of phrases. What it looks at is forward phrases that are the same. In other words, it compares two documents. And if there are enough four-word phrases that are exactly the same, it flags it as plagiarized. So just thinking that you can go change a word here, change a word there, you know, on your web pages and suddenly you're unique. Every bit of text on your website must be written from scratch. It must not exist anywhere else on planet Earth. And some of you don't even know where your text came from. You don't even know how it got on there. You may have relied on your web designer to come up with that text, and they may have just gone to one of your competitors in another country and copied it and pasted it on yours, and you don't even know. So what do? I tell people all the time, you need to go check and see if someone's copied your stuff. And the easiest way to do that is like go to one of your web pages and highlight a couple of sentences, like actual sentences, highlight them and copy them, and then paste them into a Google search. I know it'll be long. Put quotes around the ends, that when you put a quote, like at the beginning of that and at the end of that, basically you're telling Google to find all those words in that order. So you're doing an exact search for those words. It is the easiest way to see if someone is copying what you're doing. Okay. And if someone else is doing it, then you got to figure out if they copied you or if, God forbid, you copied them. And if you find a copy of it out there, one of you is not getting helped at all. I would just rewrite yours and move on. Next, your content must be conversational. In other words, it's got to be written at a 5th grade level. Once again, you are not qualified, if you're the business owner, to understand this. You're not, because you know too much. You're an expert. And things that are expert don't get found. You see, think about it. Let's say I did a search on butterflies on the internet. And the first thing that came up was a doctoral thesis written at Yale about butterflies. I'm sure it's highly relevant, but do you think a 7th grader trying to do a book report will understand a doctoral thesis on butterflies? No. So Google doesn't show big words. If your website has lots of lingo and big words in it, you will not be found. All of your content must be written at a 5th grade level at most. And you're going, how do you know what level it's written at? Heck, Microsoft Word will even tell you what grade level your writing is at. And there's even free websites out there. You can copy some of your text and paste it in there, and it'll tell you what grade level it's written at. And I'm here to tell you, if you, the business owner, wrote most of the content on your website, chances are it's up in the 10th, 11th grade, 12th grade level, and Google will hate you. Google will hate it because Google wants whatever comes up number one to be relevant to the biggest audience. And if the only people that will understand my stuff is a person with a master's degree, Google's not going to show that. You follow me? Because very few people will understand that. Here's another way of explaining it. Back in the day, you know, when we wrote in high school and our teacher would give us an assignment and say, you need to write a full page report, double space on this. So we would do it. And what would we do while we're writing? We would actually start using big words to impress our teacher. And we would actually go in and replace some of what we wrote with big words. In other words, we were taught to impress. We were not taught to communicate. Big words are evil. Big words are evil. Big words are evil. Okay. You're saying, well, what is 5th grade level? 5th grade is how I'm talking to you now. In other words, I'm not using big words to impress you. I'm not using, because if I use a lot of big words when I'm talking right now, you're going to have to think harder about them. I am using language. I'm not even using complete sentences. I'm using language that you will understand immediately without having to think about. That's 5th grade level. That's why I use the word conversational up there. It's how we talk. What did I say earlier? You need to treat Google like a human. If you treat them like a human and talk to them like a human, you will get better results. And if you remember that, you're going to show up better in Google if your website content is designed that way. How did I discover all this? Well, I have a website, ericspellman.com. And what I do is YouTube. And I'm very excited because YouTube is kind of my thing. You know, we've had over 1.7 million views on my videos. And I was so excited because, you know, people were watching my videos. But then I had some people come up to me and say, Eric, you know, I like your videos about online marketing, but, you know, I'm at work, you know, and I can't watch a video. I can't listen to a video because I have other people around me. I wish there was some way for me to read it instead of watch it. So I said, okay. So what I did was I started writing transcripts. And actually, I found a website that would watch my videos for me and create a word for word transcript of what I said. And then what I did was I posted the transcript, you know, the word for word, what I said, I put that below my video on my website. So people could either watch the video or read the transcript. And I thought, okay, good. I'm helping these people. Didn't think about it. Weeks later, my phones lit up like Christmas trees. I mean, I started getting calls from all over the United States from people saying, hey, tell me about your services. Tell me about what you do. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm from Amarillo, Texas. How in the world did you find me? And so I asked someone finally, and I said, well, you showed up number 1 in Google. You showed up number 4. You were on the first page of Google. And I wasn't even trying. I never thought I had a shot. And what I discovered, it was the transcripts. Because think about it. A transcript is what? Text. And since it's every word I said, it's what? Conversational. It's 5th grade level because that's how we all talk to each other. I'm telling you, if you make videos, there's a huge advantage to getting a transcript made and posting it below the video on your website. Because think about it, because it's what I said, it's unique, right? Remember I said it has to be unique, not exist anywhere else. Well, guess what? What I'm saying is unique. So it's unique and it's conversational. Also, you need to realize that any page that you even want to be considered by Google, it's got to have at least 400 to 600 words on it. Same goes with a product description. You're saying, well, how come I don't show up for this? Well, I sell this product and I don't even show up. Well, chances are your product description doesn't even have 400 to 600 words in it. That's why Google really likes blogs. But to be honest, I could do a blog, but I don't like writing as much. So I just transcribe my videos and Google likes it. That's just how I do it. Also, Google, those little spider bots, they need to see growth. How often are you, and I used to say updating your website, but that's not really accurate. I now like to say, how often are you adding to your website? Your website is a living, breathing thing, and it needs to be growing. Some of y'all think of it as a billboard, and you had it built a year ago and you haven't touched it. And what ends up happening is this: the spider bots show up and they go, hey, has anything been added? No? Okay, we'll come back in a week. They come back in a week. Has anything been added? No? No. We'll come back in a month. They set you up on a schedule based on how frequently you add to your content. And the more frequently you add, the more spider bots visit you. Why? Because Google wants the most current answers first. So if you gave the right answer 20 years ago and someone gave the right answer last year, guess who's going to show up first? Your website is a living, breathing thing. Whether you're adding blogs or whether you're adding videos with transcripts, whatever it is you're doing, you need to continually be updating it. It never, ever stops. The spider bots notice. Now, how do you determine topics? People say, Eric, do you ever run out of things to talk about? That's what I'm worried about, Eric. I'm going to run out of things to talk about. No, you won't. You will never run out of things to talk about. It's your business. If someone shows up, a customer shows up, do you like run out of words? No. You could go on and on and on about your business. And there's always new things happening, new technologies, new rules, new things all the time that you can be talking about. Monitor the industry news in your industry. See what's currently hot. See what's currently being talked about. And then you talk about it. Also, listen to your customers. What are they telling you? I'm telling you, that's one of the best things to do is to research your own customers. Because if you have enough of them say, you know what, we're really looking for this, and that's going to clue you in on what you need to what? Start writing about. And spy on your competitors. Go to their website. Go see what they're writing about. That'll always give you ideas. Now, don't copy them because I told you it ain't unique, right? And you ain't going to get anything out of that. It's got to be completely written from scratch. Google also wants to see structure. Like on my website, I have a videos tab. And if you click on videos, you will see a link like a table of contents to all my videos. And they're even subcategorized. And what Google does is it sees that, and it sees structure, and it sees organization, and it understands. I'm telling you, Google is like a 5th grade student in what it understands. Google understands structure. You need to create a logical structure on your website for all those blogs, for all whatever it is your content is out there. You need to do that. You also need to remember Eric's rule of 3 clicks. Now, this has nothing to do with SEO, but structure will help with this. You got to realize everyone on the internet has ADD and they're lazy. That's right. Everyone on the internet, including you and me. And if it takes more than 3 clicks to get to any page on your website, then that page will be visited very rarely. That's because people will give up. How many times have you been on someone's website and you're looking for something very specific and you can't find it? You just go, ugh, and you go to the next guy in the Google list, probably their competitor. I must be able to reach every page on your website within 3 clicks because I will not give you a 4th. Google likes that too, by the way. Other considerations, you got to claim your Google Plus page or your Google Business page, or Google keeps changing the name of it. Google uses this. When you do a search on businesses, sometimes it'll come up and say, oh, here's this business and here's their hours. And Here's all this. And you're saying, how does it know all that? That's because that business set up their Google Plus page or their Google business page. Think of it. It's just like teaching Google what it is you do. And that will actually help you in the SEO. It really will. It'll help you in search engine optimization. And by the way, the people who can help you the most to do that are your New Mexico SBDC people. They're experts at this. And if you've never had a reason to set an appointment with your local SBDC counselor, do it for this reason alone, because they can help your information about your company. They can help teach Google what it is your company does. And trust me, even doing just that will make you start showing up a heck of a lot more than it is now. Also, the names of your web pages matter. Okay. Whatever you name the page itself and whatever titles are on the page, Google sees those as titles and as page names, and it gives them a greater strength. It considers that even more. So I would recommend creating a whole bunch of pages, smaller pages, rather than one long page. So you could have one long page called butterflies, where it's everything you know about butterflies, or you can break it into 20 pages, like, what do butterflies eat? How do butterflies fly? Things like that, divided up into different pages. And each one of those pages, Google will like even more because it's very specific. You can change your domain or your .com. Believe it or not, your .com does help. Now, back in the day, people would go out and buy a whole bunch of different .coms simply because they thought it would help them rank well in Google. Well, it used to, but not anymore. Right now, Google only looks at your primer. You can buy 100 other domains and kind of redirect or point them to your main website. But there's only one authoritative name on your website, authoritative.com, your actual .com. That's all that Google looks at now, because people were abusing this. So don't let anyone try to sell you a .com or a .ch or a .mx or a .ru or a .biz or a whatever. Don't have them try to sell you all those and telling you that it's somehow going to help you. It's not. Okay. It's only going to help you if you think you can sell it to someone else and make a buck. Now, if you ever talk to someone on the internet about ranking well, they've probably mentioned something called meta tags. Okay. And they'll say, oh, the secret is meta tags. Have you filled out your meta tags? Well, people were abusing that. It's kind of like codes you can put in the website. They kind of tell Google what it is, but Google pretty much ignores those. They do still matter, but really only for one reason. And that's like the meta description. I don't know, this sounds all techie, but the meta description shows up in the search result. Like when you do a search in Google, that little snippet of text underneath the title, that's where the meta description shows up. So it can help there. Someone said, how to get Microsoft Word to tell you the grade level of your text. Microsoft Word, it is in there. It's under, what is it? The section that talks about the dictionary and the thesaurus. There's a way to look up the reading level. I think they call it the reading level. Okay. Or statistics about the document. It's in there. I've used it. And it's actually very good. I think it uses the Flesher. I think it's called the Flesher standard of putting a grade level on text. And I think that's the one Google uses as well. So it's in the menus. It's not a button on a keypad up on it's on a toolbar. It's in the menus. And like I said, I think it's where you'll find the speller and the thesaurus and all that. Sorry, I couldn't take it.
We had a question come up in chat also. Does this work for brand new online stores that do not have many purchases yet?
Google doesn't even look at your purchases. They don't. The purchases, it doesn't even matter. Google doesn't even know who's buying from you. It's only about content. It's all about content. So if you're brand new, that's fine, but you better have a lot of content. A lot of content if you really want to start showing up quick. And if you're brand new, you'd better make sure that your Google business listing is correct and as comprehensive as you can make it. And like I said, your New Mexico SBDC counselors are experts at that, and they can make sure that all the right blanks are filled in for you. So once again, get an appointment with these experts. Okay. Also, Google actually looks at your social media. It looks to see how often you're updating your social media. It looks to see how often you post and how many of your posts on your page are pointed back to your website. And it looks at, like I said, how many comments you get and how many likes you're getting and all of that. So if you have a website, but you're not participating in social media at all, it's going to hurt you a little bit. Because to be honest, what is Google's goal? I told you what Google's goal is they want to rank websites like a human would rank a website. And if a lot of people think you rank, that you deserve to be ranked well, that's what Google wants to do, is rank you well. Social media is one of the ways that Google measures how many people like you or not, or like your content or not. So make sure you stay social media active. Remember, content is king. Text. It's all about text. And you need to look at how much text you have on your website. And remember, a page has to have at least 400 to 600 words on it for Google to even consider it to be ranked. Understand how people really are searching for you. And remember, I told you they're asking questions and they're talking about problems. They're talking about questions and problems, not answers and solutions. Okay. SEO is ongoing. You got to keep adding to it, adding to it, adding to it. You can't stop or you'll drop in the rankings. Okay. Whew. That was a lot. Questions on anything we've gone over so far?
We have another question that came in. Do bullets or lists help or hurt if written at the 5th grade level?
Yes. Google actually, that's a good point. Google actually likes bullets and lists. And because people will tend to be like, give 4 answers, and so Google can easily divide that up and understand it. So I've actually had some Googlers, people who work at Google, tell me that Google actually prefers a list to a paragraph of information. I can't prove that, but I've heard that. So yeah, one of the things I would recommend is that if you're writing a blog, title the blog a question that you might want to be found on, and then give the answer in like 4 or 5 bullets, but then underneath that, explain those answers. And I've heard from a few people, and I've even tried it and it works, that Google really, really, really likes that kind of structure. Great question.
And I did not know that they were called Googlers. That is
Yeah.
a side note.
The employees are called
Googlers. So I was kind of looking up Microsoft, and we were talking about the readability and level statistics. And Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but it says go to File, Options, select Show Readability Statistics. So that's under the word. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of deep and you have to find it, but it's in there. And you could copy and paste some of your website stuff onto a blank Microsoft Word document and then just do that, and see it. But there's also websites that will do the same thing too for free. I just don't know the names of them. So yeah, you need to find out what your readability is. And sadly, what most of you are going to discover is that your website content is probably at a 9th, 10th, 11th, even college level reading, especially if what you do is kind of complex.
Oh my gosh, interesting advice. I wanted to tell everyone before we quit for today is that we are going to have Eric back this week. He is going to be doing a webinar on your website could be a lead generating machine. Also, I also want to remind you that when you are attending Eric's webinar and you think of any questions that came up on a previous webinar, bring them to the next one and we can get those addressed, because sometimes you will send you the presentation and then you realize, wait a minute, I have a question now. So bring those to the next webinar.
Okay. Like I said, just go check your own website. And also don't forget to Google yourself and add the word sucks. You might be surprised.
I'm going to do that right now. I am. Thanks everybody for joining us today, and we will see you next time. You guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye-bye.